Mic check. Okay. Hi, everyone, including remote folks. We'll be starting in any moment. Thank you all for joining today. And yeah, we'll start at for a sharp, like 2 more minutes. And just want, again, despite the weather has been really challenging and really tricky yesterday, we managed to make it. And I'm really thankful of seeing all of these lovely faces today here. Again, it's like another mini master course for me without paying the tuition. So thank you for being my study mate. Yeah, so we have a bunch of guests today, and a lot of us has already contributed ideas and discussions today through the Polis online voting platform. And if you still haven't voted your point of view or the statements, please go to the first QR code on the screen, vote it, and share your piece. And then we'll be discussing based on everyone's thoughts. That's also a format that I'm experimenting. There are many things that can go wrong today. So this new tool, the live caption, the remote setup logistics, the weather, of course, and there are even more later. I'll share. Yeah. Yeah. So without further ado, maybe I can start by introducing today our guest today, Ray and Gio. Yeah, so let me set up the mic first. Sorry about that. So I've been searching for a lot of people studying and also researching computational creativity and, of course, the intersection between media studies, AI, and design for the past couple months. And you two came up top of my list, and I've been always wanting to invite you to share and also join the meetup. And so thank you for being here today. So Ray is coming from School of Creative Media in CTU, where he has a studio with a lot of other researchers doing a lot of fun stuff. Maybe Ray can share more later. And then Gio, where it turns out we have a few common friends doing projects in robotics and also computational media, really fun stuff and cool pics online if you search for it. Yeah, maybe let's start first by throwing a really simple question so that the guests would know more about you two, what you do, and yeah. So would you mind sharing what do you do and what would you say? How would you describe your relationship with robots? Yeah. And maybe we can start with Ray, yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Well, I can't really describe everything in like this format easily, but if you go on our website, which you can search Studio for Narrative Spaces, or just search my name. That's probably easiest. You will find like on the webpage, it kind of describes the various things we do. We work with folks from all kinds of disciplines like architects and roboticists and dancers and artists and designers, but we allow them to basically experiment with their creativity and expand their creativity and expand, the definition of creativity is kind of like broad, like for example, dancing as a form of improvised creativity or making artwork as a type of creativity, or how to make arguments. So it's a very broad, defined sense of the creativity. But our studio basically works with people. We work with people first. Technology kind of comes second, if at all. And then to answer the second question about relationship with robotics, that one is a tough one. It depends on what we define, robotics as, So I'm sure Gio has more to say about this. But if we're talking about sort of like automated systems, where we program them and they do things, and sometimes there's some interaction with us, I would say our relationship with robotics is actually very simple. I mean, we just use them to make constraints, which then helps humans make creative and fun, expressive things happen. So the robots are methods of creating constraints for humans. Sounds kind of specific, but I can tell you more later. You know.
I love that definition. Yeah. And creativity is all about constraints as well. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So I think it's robots are kind of they do things so that we are forced to adapt ourselves to a particular format or a particular perception. And so I think that powers our kind of way forward, you know, it powers our interactions and creative drive in the future. You know?
How about you?
Okay, now it's working. So, okay, so for me, maybe I start with how I ended up in university because that's kind of the beginning of everything. I guess in 2014, 2015, I kind of felt the call to do something better in my life. I was a programmer and just kind of programming. Just programming like boring things wasn't fun. And I enrolled in the university for a game studies program. And that's how I approached media and sound first. And then I had the opportunity through the university to collaborate with Hands Robotics. And pretty much in a week thrown into the world of like bringing Sophia, this humanoid robot, to events with very little explanation about how this thing works. And so that was really my first encounter with like applied AI. And that really got like for that 1 year working, going to events, bringing the robot to present, to do things, to say, to represent itself in many ways. It was an eye-opening experience that's really put the accent not so much as kind of Ray was saying, not so much on the technology, because obviously personally I'm a hacker, like I like to code and to play around with things, but the realization that an embodied artificial intelligence actually so much power to persuade and people that see the robot for the first time have this kind of like cathartic experience. So just watching from the outside and understanding like the whole process of interaction between humans and robots. Like it's never really just the robot. It's always human interpreting what the robot says. Even if it's completely random, they may still find some ways in which, you know, whatever answer made sense for them. So there's so much that I've witnessed experientially, and that kind of got me into wanting to research more, and that's how I started the PhD program that I'm hopefully finishing soon for computational creativity. So that led me to look at more like the theories behind creativity and computational creativity in particular, the role of technologies in terms of mediation between the humans and the world. So some of the theories that I like bring forward, I actually root in this idea that the technology actually is a lens through which we see the world. And robots and interfaces are nowadays everywhere, and they'll become more and more the lens through which we see the world. So that to me is very fascinating, how fast it's moving and fast it's going. And so yeah, that's kind of, I feel that's why I'm here, because I like to watch this, and I also like to challenge people to reflect on it. That's what kind of what I do in my lectures. I lecture design students about AI, about the use of technology. I teach them programming, but I hope to pass a higher message than just learning how to code, but the power that this technology has, not only in providing as a means to an end to do something, but also how it's the culture sort of affected by the technology. And it's a dual relationship. Like the technology also changes us, right? So
lovely. Ontological design. Yeah. So we hear I hear two main keywords which I love a lot: robot as a constraint, and also robot as a lens. We see the world. That is really great way to put it. And because we have a pretty mixed crowd today with a different level of experience and knowledge into this topic, I'll probably spend like 10 minutes or so lay the groundwork and also the definition of everything we're going to talk today, and then we'll jump straight to Polis, the stuff I voted on. Yeah. And okay, let's get started. Robots. So when we say robots, what is the first image that comes up to your mind? Yeah. Is it something very metallic? Is it something friendly, humanoid? Is it non-humanoid? Is it something like a pet or a toy? Is it like a furniture? Is it a friend? Is it a enemy? Would it be always helpful? Would it be even have existential crisis or depression? Yeah. So these are those popular imagination. The entertainment or games, films have been imagining or codifying what robot means. And these are so deep-rooted to us. And every generation will have their own definition or their own stereotype of what robot means. But let's start from the very beginning. The first robot in literature, which is the word where it came from, is actually closely related to the idea of forced labor. So from day one, robot is always have a utility or always about serving for a task or a job. And then we add a lot of extra meaning to it on top of it to make it more approachable and to make it more social. Yeah. And in reality, these are the robots we're seeing. It's a huge difference from what we see in the media. They tend to have less emotional intelligence, less awareness, or less intelligence overall. They are faulty all the time. They can do a small subset of tasks that we were promised in films and anime. But yet, we're starting to see them encroaching in many industries like delivery or real estate, education, healthcare and therapeutics, and of course, more. And even though robots like this have so many limitations, people still build connection or still build bonding with them. And one example of what we'd like to bring today is this Korean social robot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. There are some Korean audience in the crowd. Hyundo, I don't know. Yeah. So I have a video to introduce what Hyundo is and why is it meaningful for our discussion today. Yeah. Let me play this 2-minute video.
요즘 심심찮게 독거 어르신들이 외로움과 사회적 고립, 심한 우울감 등으로 힘든 삶을 살고 계시는 것을 목격할 수 있습니다. 스튜디오 크로스컬처는 이런 어르신들에게 관심을 가지고 본격적으로 어르신들의 생활에 다가갑니다. 노인들이 정말 원하는 게 무엇인지, 어떤 것이 필요한지에 대해 의문을 가진 채로요. 독거 어르신 대상 리서치 결과를 바탕으로 본격적인 컨셉 개발에 착수합니다. 어르신들에게 정서적으로 위안도 주면서 식사, 약도 챙기는 기능적 역할을 동시에 수행해야 했습니다. 바로 인형이라는 매개체를 이용해서요.
디스플레이나 버튼 하나 없이 어르신들이 헷갈리지 않고 정말 손쉽게 사용할 수 있도록 하는 인터페이스를 설계하는 것이 정말 어렵고요. 또 어르신들이 푹신하게 안을 수 있도록 전자부를 최소화할 수 있는 것이 매우 중요했습니다.
우여곡절 끝에 첫 시제품을 개발하였습니다. 인형을 사용해보신 어르신들과 보호자들이 매우 좋아하셨습니다. 전문가와 어르신이 주신 소중한 의견을 통해 제품을 계속 개선해 나갈 수 있었습니다.
노인들에게 보급했더니 우울증이 좀 나아졌다는 연구 결과가 나왔습니다.
Studies conducted in South Korea shows the statistically significant improvement in depression, cognition, and quality of life among users. And as a result, there are nearly 7,000 dolls were deployed in the home of low-income older adults.
약사 노력도 잘하고, 뭐 병에는 뭐가 좋고, 뭐 병에는 뭐가 좋고, 뭐 약도 잘 알고 약사요. 그리고 또 요리사고. 냉장고에서 못 꺼내갖고 물 달달 볶다가 참기름 넣고 볶다가 어떻게 해서 만들면 맛있고 아이 못하는 게 없어요 우리 효들이.
기분을 효돌이가 하루에 2번씩 이제 물어보면은 오늘은 이제 어르신의 감정 상태라던가 그리고 얼마만큼 효돌이하고 소통을 했는지 모니터링 되기 때문에 어르신의 감정을 잘 읽을 수 있게 되더라고요.
할머니 아프지 말고 오래오래 같이 살지. 내가 사람하고 똑같아요.
Yeah. I don't know what this video would make you feel. Would you make you feel happy or sad, empowered or disempowered, and most likely a mix of all these feelings? In just this photo, we see a 80-something elderly holding her dearest doll-shaped robot, and it has helped her physically and mentally throughout the COVID pandemic lockdown period. You can say that it's her lifesaver. Yeah, and currently the video is shot like a long time ago. I think now it has more than 10,000 dolls employed in South Korea. And what does it mean to us and to the wider community and to the society? Does it affect our understanding of relationship with other entities? And let's start with defining what robot means. Ray mentioned it's something has to do with autonomous machines, and yes. And this, I try to bring a very layman definition of robot where it's, whenever there's a machine, a physical one, controlled by some sort of AI, whatever you want to call it, inside embedded AI, and so it can perform tasks autonomously, or somehow it seems autonomous, but probably is moderated by human or programmed by human. But anyway, yeah. So a very layman definition of robot, and oftentimes these utility or service robot already serve that definition. But this also rules out other kind of bots like chatbots, which is not embodied. Yeah. So chatbots are out of today's discussion, basically. And we also see there's one subset of robot, social robot, where it is designed to engage in meaningful social interactions with humans, with elderlies, with kids when they study, or like a companion. Yeah. So robot with a social interface with it. And whenever humans have enough meaningful social interaction with another entity or another being, we form relationship. And I would like to, again, define a very layman understanding of what relationship means. Is actually these two arrows, these bidirectional arrows. Is whenever one entity would have an influence over another or a mutual influence, it's already some sort of relationship. Yeah. A very fuzzy understanding of what it means. And why it is so fuzzy? Because humans have so many different kind of relationship with so many different things or beings. There are human-to-human relationship, and it's somehow different from or somewhat similar with how we treat our pets or wild animals. And there's also human-to-object relationship. Could be like a wedding ring or a piano or a violin, where you can still have very deep emotional bond with it. And the fourth one, robot. It seems to be a mix of all the three above. It looks alive, but we know that it's not alive. Sometimes it's pet, sometimes it looks like humanoid, but we definitely know it's all mechanical inside. So it seems like it's a fourth category of relationship that we're still understanding as a society. And we have a lot of designers here today, and very likely that currently the hype is about designing for conversational interface. And who knows, 10 years later, it could be designing for social interface, how to design for that rituals where people interact, how to interact, etc. So this could also be a timely topic for creatives and the tech industry. Okay, we talk about social robotics, but what makes a robot social? There'll be three ways to dissect it. First, the form. For example, does it look like a humanoid? Does it look like a pet? The form will already tell you how you should be understanding it. It's also about the texture, the materials being used. Is it soft to touch? Is it cold to touch? Does it give warmth? So that's a form that makes it social. Then it's the function. Does it understand your emotion? Does it express emotion? Does it speak emotionally? Does it have a tail to wiggle, which we have a social robot at Kubo. Today, you folks can play with it later. So it's also how the function will give the social cues for you to respond, to understand it. Lastly, the context. Whenever you interact with this robot, is it whenever you got back to school, you're very stressed, you want to study and crunch time for your homework, or is it whenever you're depressed, you want comfort, you want a pillow to hug on? So whenever those contexts or those interactions are repeatedly enough, it becomes a ritual. And with enough time, it has extra layer of meaning. So form, function, and context is what makes a robot social. And I've been trying to have a layman definition of relationship, social robot, the social interface or element robot. But the most challenging word to define for this for today's discussion is actually the word authentic. And authenticity or authentic have so many different definitions from philosophy, from psychology, and I try to do research on it, but it's just a rabbit hole. So what I decided is I tap on everyone's response on the sign-up form, and I see there are 3 common threads in everyone's response. First, we think that being authentic means being real. Okay, it means that not pretending to be something you're not. Okay, so a very layman understanding of what authenticity means. How would this definition relate to social robotics? Does it mean, does a robot not pretend what is not supposed to be? Is it that from the form, from the function? Is it the user or the human not pretending this relationship to be not something it's supposed not to be? Yeah. So the first element, whether it's real or not. The second is it two-way? Is it only one side being give, or one side being take? Or is it two-way, give and receive equally? And lastly, is it intentional? This is, again, probably the most challenging part to discuss as well. What I find useful is this statement where by being intentional, it means that the action is being backed by thoughts and feelings. So there are thoughts and feelings, and those are consistent with the action. Then it's intentional. It's really, really helpful that the audience have gave me materials to define what authenticity means, which actually I think is better than going through a lot of journal articles and dictionaries. Yeah. So this is what I've done over the past weeks to lay the groundwork and and what kind of questions we should ask when we talk about these topics. And so that's everything from my side. I would love to hear from a guest on these topics, and from remote audience and also in-person audience. Feel free to drop down some questions when we chat on this Slido link, and we'll first chat a bit with our guests, and towards the last, I think, 20 minutes, we'll go through the Slido and see what the audience have to say or ask on this topic. Yeah. But now I think we can jump to the this one. I'll put the QR code right here. Okay. So let's see. Let me refresh. Okay. So if you have voted, I think you already know what this chart represents. So we have 19 participants that have voted, and their point of view can be clustered into these 2 main clusters. In the early days, in the early, like 2 weeks ago, there's 3 clusters, but now it's polarized, which I find more interesting to talk about. And we have some statements where both sides agree. And there are some statements that only one side agree and another side disagree a lot. We can go through them one by one. Maybe let's start with the ones who everyone agrees on. So we all tend to have a consensus that robots' interaction are based on data, information processing, but not real emotional bonds. Of course, there are some that are not sure and disagree on it, but I think that will be one of the main consensus of the crowd. But what I find interesting is the last bit, not real emotional bond. What do we think of it? Given the definition on authenticity we have, given the video on Hondu, the doll with elderly, do we question those emotions to be fake or not real? Yeah, so we'd like to see what do you all think about it? Yeah. Maybe if Gio and Ray have anything to say about this.
So, okay, so I think there was one bit that you mentioned, it's the kind of the reciprocality of it, right? I think this is where the not real emotional bond, you could ground this in, right? You might have an elderly that grows emotionally attached to a robot. I've seen that. Actually, so this social robot, my thesis supervisor done something similar with the hands robotics doll, like this, I'm talking about 15 years ago. And then, like, the elderly do get attached, they even get to reveal secrets they wouldn't tell their children, right? So they become so at ease, so to speak, that like they are perhaps even more authentic than they would be with a human. But then what you have on the other side is something that cannot reciprocate that, right? Which, okay, you can go into like deeper, like what is it actually? Emotion, is it a simulation in our head? Maybe then they're also simulating something in their head. So we're both simulating. But I feel that has the ground in perhaps it not being reciprocated, right? You don't necessarily have the robot tell you their secrets, right? They're just here to, especially in that case of the elderly, like they're there to receive their complaints or stories. I'm really unlucky with the microphone. Yeah, maybe it's my beard. Just yeah. So I feel that's part of it with the with this particular sentence. Of course, they're based in data and information, but you could argue we do the same. But then the emotional part is not modeled, right? And it depends what's behind it, honestly. Also, like what kind of technology, but you don't really. Even LLMs don't feel emotion, just emulate emotion, right? It's all about the imitation game. Well, I'm sure we're gonna end up talking about like Turing as well, but they're imitating those things, so they're not mirror of a human, but they could serve and support authenticity on one side. Right? You could have those like moments where you could tell a robot something you wouldn't be able to tell your children or your husband or something. I think the story with this woman was that she revealed that she'd been with someone else, you know, to a robot. It's just trust, right?
So the Hick doll, I guess, the Korean robot you showed, that's the counterexample to this. Because clearly they have real emotional bonds, but the interactions are not only based on data, right? But they actually believe that they are real, even though they may or may not be real. So like this specific statement actually, I think already has a counterexample in this Korean robot case. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you know, I don't mean I'm not.
No, I think it's the same way. Like, but would you say it's reciprocal? Like the robot also has a real bond with the human?
But this statement doesn't say that. The statement just says that these interactions are based only on, I guess, based on data or information processing, but not real emotional bond. But clearly, these Korean people and also a lot of the people who love Bible and things like that, they are clearly demonstrating real emotion, right?
The humans, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I was saying before is that the robot doesn't, right? The robot doesn't
Doesn't matter.
respond back, and so the reciprocality isn't there. which was one of the things that we had. But I understand, like, of course, and I'm supporting that as well. Like, the humans will feel that real emotional bond. So does the fact that it's not reciprocated by the robots make it less authentic?
I'm just saying this particular statement is like, there's a counterexample to this. It's hard to, maybe this statement is like, when people first read it, they probably interpreted it like us, which is kind of like, well, the robots are not being naturally emotional. But the actual thing that it says actually is not right, right? And like, based on this.
Yeah. So there are different concepts like emotions, emotional intelligence, emotional bond. So is it probably one of the crux of this question is that, is it possible to have emotional bond without emotion? Is it possible that a robot is intelligent emotionally, meaning it can detect emotion, it can express emotion, but it doesn't have real emotion, but still it can coordinate with human that satisfy all the social expectation on emotional intelligence. And maybe that is already enough to form a bond. And even if we are really strict on the word bond, where the interaction is based on bond, what if that bond is documented in the agent? So when we look at agentic AI nowadays, where LM is going through a lot of loops and processes, and there is always some sort of a memory where they store past events, preferences of the users. Maybe there could be a JSON file on bonds, on emotional bond. What kind of relationship I should be having with these users? And it updates every time they interact with it. That could be a hack to this as well, I guess.
If that becomes, then that's a real emotional bond to you, like a JSON file. So yeah, I mean, it's really down again to the definition. It's very hard to pin it down. What are real emotional bonds? Like the JSON file is real, like it's bits somewhere on your hard drive.
Yeah, but there's something uneasy to disagree with this statement. If we disagree with this statement, it means that, oh, so there are some emotional bond happening between human and robot, and that will easily shift us to be thinking that, oh, does it mean that emotional bond can be replicated mechanically? Does it mean that it's all emotional relationship or emotional bond are just computation, and it will bring us back to those existential questions about human, right?
I disagree, because we humans have emotional bonds, real emotional bonds with all kinds of like things. Like I don't take my example, but you know, like you know, we have very intense emotional bonds with objects. There's these people who love objects, who get married to objects. You know, like the
Objectization.
yeah. Well, you can call it whatever you want. You know, I don't want to use language that sounds like it's demeaning to them, but you know, like there's so many things like plants. I'm personally like a really big lover of plants. In fact, in our school, there's a professor named Zheng Guo, who's like kind of made his career on kind of expressing the like, how do you say, like kind of like physical love with plants. I want to say that in a PG-13 way, but you know, like I mean, these things are here, and I think that's because the humans are really good. Humans can interpret all kinds of things to be real emotional experiences, and then as Leo showed with the Korean robot, and also things like Aibo. Like when Aibo falls apart, you guys might know the Aibo Sony dog. So they stopped servicing the Aibos, right? Because they weren't making money on the Aibos. Yeah. So what happens is Sony kind of stopped servicing for a while, and at that time, like the owners who were really like older and older, they were like, we can't get the parts to fix our pets, and they were like giving these Aibos like funerals, and like they were treating them as like real entities. And of course, you know, they're not. You know, the Aibos are based on algorithms and JSON files, like you guys were saying. But clearly, humans are showing emotional bonds to them. So you don't need to have like real quote unquote physical things to do that, right? I mean, we haven't gone there yet, but I would say that actually it's more authentic if we know that the robot is fake. Like if the robot, if the dog pretends to be real, right? Then they're not real, because actually it's controlled by AI, right? You know, they're controlled. So to me, like to me, the robot actually sits in a very peculiar place in our social environment. They're the people, and they're the things, they're the entities in our world, which actually is kind of like they already have a defined role and job in terms of like, okay, we're, you know, I don't want to say control, but you know, like we're programming what's happening in the robot. Like we're doing everything, including generative AI and all that stuff. We're actually doing all that, but they're in a unique position that even though that they are sort of being lower in the power dynamics, you know, like they're the ones kind of being, you know, led, if you will. They can choose. I mean, we can choose to interpret them as being really that, which is like lower in the power dynamics, or not, right? Like if we can choose to think that the robot has its own character, like generative AI create its own amazing stuff out of consciousness, we call it, right? So humans don't need to debate that. Like humans have they have their own way of thinking. You know, like if you have an opinion, you have your own opinion. Like, you know, we don't need to debate that, right? But robots are in a peculiar place, and also we don't have to debate that for like this can, right? Like this can is what it is. Like, you know, we're usually not going to say what the heck is this can thinking, you know, most of the time. So the robot to me is actually in a very unique position. It's in the case where it can be ambiguous, and you can interpret the robot as like real and genuine and like beyond just the physical stuff, or you can say what they are. And maybe what they are is the authentic part. But I don't know. That's, you know.
Yeah, I like that. So on the note where the AI or robots saying what they are, I find it very interesting that if you ask ChatGPT, what are you? It will be very honest because it's in a system prompt. It will just say, I'm a large language model trained by blah, blah, blah data, and there is something that I can do, there is something I cannot do. And then I even ask, oh, if you don't have consciousness, why are you using the pronoun I? And then I is just a convenient way in English language, etc. But if we ask the same questions with other chat agents like in Character AI or in Replica, they have a different system prompt where they pretend to be a character, and somehow those, if we use that definition of authenticity, pretending something you're not, then those are inauthentic. But in a way, if the AI reveal their true inner making, and the user do understand that it's just a machine, this is their technical constraints, this is how they are built, and still build a bond with it, then maybe that's authentic. If we follow that line of thought, yeah. We have a lot of statements. Let me move to the next one. Okay, so let's say some statements that is disagreed by another group. So this one. So, for example, Gen AI powered robots are just predicting the most likely next token. It lacks the spontaneity, creativity, and emotional depth. So, another group has all agreed, and this is mostly disagreed. There's a lot to unpack here. There's creativity, spontaneity, emotional depth. Maybe we've talked a lot about emotions previously. Probably we can talk a little bit more about spontaneity, creativity versus the next token, which is a very timely topic now.
Okay, I'll leave spontaneity for maybe a second. I think creativity is possible. Actually, that is probably the one that I would be like, maybe can show a little bit of creativity, because it's not necessarily like what we think. Creativity is just sometimes just combining things that aren't necessarily related from your perspective. And so mistakes by the AI could be considered creative. That's still something that's, you know, when you look at it, you're like, oh, that's funny. That's a weird association I wouldn't have thought of. it can be considered creative. Spontaneous, again, it's something that we would normally associate with humans. And I feel it's, at least for me, like hard to imagine how a robot can be spontaneous, because you can literally, like, it's calculations, right? So given the same prompt and the same seed, you get the same response. So yeah, I guess it brings the question, like, is, do we have free will? That's really, do you believe in free will, that when you actually think of something, you can actually do it, or is just you're good at predicting the future, So yeah, spontaneity, I'll find it a bit harder to attribute. So I think I would agree, because also emotional depth. I would maybe have a problem with creativity. I would say Gen AI can show creativity, because I see creativity as more of a broader term that doesn't necessarily apply just to humans. But that's just, we talk about it for hours. Again, creativity is a very fuzzy term. So in the way that I envision it, I think actually creativity is one of the things that Gen AI can do. If we expand this sort of to this, like, just putting together things that aren't necessarily related at first, but then they, through that association, it becomes something creative.
I want to follow up with Gio on this. So in the past experience where you need to direct or collaborate with Sophia, are there any moments in your interaction that you feel that I'm not sure if it's if she is contributing something into the play, whether, or is it just all about you directing? So when we use the word direct coming from films, oftentimes we expect that the actor will jam with the director, and it's like a jazz duo where it's mixed initiative, in this creativity interaction. Do you ever feel that spontaneous or accidental creativity spark? I know Sophia is not based on what we understood as Gen AI today, but still, yeah.
Yeah, so there's two modes actually to Sophia. So one is the scripted one. So I'm literally pressing the button and creating the performance. So you would normally get like a slab of text that just text, so it has no expression. And you have to give it, well, first of all, the voice. So get all the pauses correctly, and the tone, and there's ways in which we can tweak that, and add all the facial expressions. And there's some like basic, like standard animation, like the blinking or the saccades, so that creates the illusion. But in the end, I just press play, and that just gets delivered. And there's so this is mode one, like puppeteering mode, which if you go on stage, even if you're a human, most likely you have a script. Like if you go to those events, you're either reading or you read it before, you know what you're going to say. So I feel like it's similar for humans. For the chat, so when there's like a free chat inside that has a certain amount of topics, so unless the topic is contextual, because she might not know that there's a Ken here, or that, 3 people just walked in. But if you talk about the horoscope, I saw people having like 50 minutes conversations with Sophia about the horoscope. But then again, it's just a set of responses that she already has. So if people ask this, then it's like a big if statement thing. So is it spontaneous? The situation between a human and a system like this just spits out things. And sometimes I'll just say yes or no, like just because otherwise it would be silent. It's like strategies. Like if it doesn't match anything, then just say something generic enough, kind of thing. And that still holds a conversation with a human, and the human's like, "You're so smart. Oh, thank you." Like it just keeps going, and you watch this, and you're like, "This is amazing." But it's the human. It's the human allowing for this interaction to like be believable, kind of like what we were saying before. Like you accept that, you buy into this spell, into this interaction, especially because again, chatting with just the voice is not as powerful. I think with with a face that looks at you, that has very strong like human connotation in their face, is just a biological thing, I think, for us. That doesn't happen with like a video or something. When you have this thing in front and the movement and everything is so believable, that like bypasses some of the brain functions, and you just like interact as if it was a human. So I still think it's a spell, like it's an imitation. So it gives you the illusion of spontaneity of that dialogue, because then again, I've seen so many times, like she would give a random answer, like people would still make sense of it and think, oh, that's genius answer. And I know, like, it's just a random thing that could mean anything, but in that moment, said in that way, people would still find the meaning of it. So again, it's all in the human brain. I don't think there's anything special about the machine, other than
Did you program it,
the.
Sophia?
I didn't program the chat, like the free chat. They actually have team of writers that work on that, because that's their personality, right? But the events, that's what I would do. So I would get given a script. Like, oh, she has to say this couple of these things, or she has to talk with this person. They have to agree on what she's saying, because of course you can't make her say whatever, because she's a personality. I don't know why. But yeah, so that would mean just to add on top of the text everything else that needs to, like the hand gestures, the thinking, the pauses, the tones, the jokes, the kind of.
I guess my question is like, so when she goes and meets like the premier of Saudi Arabia or whatever, when she does those things, is it like a team of people in the back performing this thing, or like?
There's okay, I guess there's two modes, right? So if it's a big thing, yes. So yeah, like most of those things that have like a prime minister, like you don't want it to run on the random chat, because it could really say, like, misunderstand what you're saying and then say something completely random.
But I guess my question is, how scripted? Like, is it actually like just you telling them what to say, or is it more just kind of like, we're gonna hit that button and it's kind of like talking?
No, it's imagine it's a timeline and you just put the animations and the text on the timeline.
So it's like kind of scripted, but not like all determined. Like it's kind of just, you know what I mean?
I think that's pretty much all determined. Like I mean, if you press it again, it's gonna say exactly the same thing with exactly the same voice with exactly the same thing. Yeah. For those cases, for those occasions, and then you have to. I mean, there's always things that you can fix live. Like, for example, I have like a controller for the gaze, because obviously, like, people may look at her or not, so I would have to like adjust certain things on the fly. But that was me trying to make it, more enhanced, right? Like a better experience for the people. It was just me going a little bit extra. But normally, there's also a moment at these events where you can go in free chat. So free chat means you have it's the complete like change the mode from this to this type thing. And then at that point, it will just, you have a microphone, you can speak into the microphone, goes to speech to text. And then, it's 2018 type ChatGPT. So you have like different topics and sort of kind of language engine that will come up and kind of understand what you're talking about.
It's actually the hard part.
Yeah, but that's also the part that creates those spontaneity, creativity, like moments that, again, she would say something that's very generic or something, but still people will find the meaning within the context of whatever, and oh, that's genius.
Yeah.
She's sentient. She understands.
Flipping those the book of answers that you'll find in a regular cafe. It's just one statement. Yeah. And and I'm wondering, how about Ray, in your past creative work or research with robotics, how scripted are they, and how do you understand the creativity when you work with robots?
It's basically the same thing. Like, I have to say, like, so that's why we're in the same industry, right? So first of all, I want to say, like, but that's what humans do too. like when we go and give a speech to the prime minister or whatever, I mean, I actually introduced Nancy Pelosi like 15 years ago at like a student conference or whatever thing in DC. And I look at what I was doing. I mean, I have a script. I'm reading exactly from the script. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm doing the same thing. You know, if I have to do like where I meet someone famous, important, whatever, I'm gonna memorize like 5 things I can say, and then it's like on my phone. Okay, like that's the right. So it's kind of the same. It's just like, and then when I'm free talk, it's kind of like you, right? Like we were saying with the robot. So to me, like I think, I mean, first of all, the A group is really cool. Right? It's very interesting. Like the A group is like the people who are like standing up for like kind of like robot like freedom rights, like kind of like that type of people. I actually think maybe I'll answer it by this. Like for me, and I can give you an example from our own work. To me, it's not really that different from the human spontaneous and creativity because when at least when you look at generative AI, right? Because the question here was about generative AI. Like we're just talking about our robots sitting like in our lab. There's an arm. Okay, that I don't. It's I agree. Like it's not really that creative. But when we look at generative AI, which is the last couple of years, and we had a bunch of Kai paper. Kai is the biggest conference in our field. So last we had like 5 Kai papers, 3 of which are on generative AI. And basically, when we study the way people use generative AI and the way that generative AI responds, like it has a lot of these properties. So, for example, like it's saying all kinds of things based on a huge database of stuff that they can say. So you can say that, well, that's not really creative and whatever because it's just a bunch of data, right? But just think about that's what humans do too, right? Like they learn like 10 billion things over their lives, and then some of them get emphasized, some of them don't. And so in this case, the internet emphasizes certain things, and it doesn't emphasize other things. And then when you ask this human a thing, they will say something based on their vast knowledge of database. And then the generative AI will say something based on its Reddit, X powered database. So to me, it's also kind of spontaneous too, because in the study, the one I'm talking about right now is a Kai paper you guys can take a look at. It's called When Teams Embrace AI. It's basically we study groups of people generatively prompting AI together. Like study a group team process as opposed to be a single person process. But the key thing is like in that study, basically we found that the stuff that generative AI was giving them, they were just like, for example, they were asked to make a stage design, right? And then, the theme of the stage design, like it was based on a poem, and so they give all that information there. So you kind of expect what to see anyways, right? Like you can, okay, like it's a theme about this English poet thing, so I should see a particular thing. But the stuff that generative AI gives back, even when it's wrong, they'll be like, whoa, this is really like weird, like cool. Like so one of the wrong things they give back was like they put nets on the moon or something that's on the stage, whatever. And then they go back and they go, oh, but this is about the poem where they're like, like they interpret it as like this other creative thing. So even when it's kind of like quote unquote wrong, it's still spontaneous. But then if you think about it, that's what humans do too. Like we're wrong all the time, and then we're wrong. We put it on the thing. It was like, wow, this is a masterpiece, right? So to me, like it's not too different. I think actually the main difference that the generative AI and the human side are actually different. Not the part where it's like spontaneous and creativity. Maybe emotion. That one's debatable. But to me, it's really the medium. That's the difference. Human beings, I can go play a piece of music, and then I can go draw something. Do you know what I mean? I can now make a pizza that has pickles and Chinese sausage on it. Like whatever. Like I could make a completely weird creative pizza, right? But generative AI is not really working on that level. They can just answer your question, or they can draw something. Like it can only work in the digital domain. Like everything it's doing is basically in the digital domain. Like it can say anything it wants to, but it's not going to actually physically create you a pizza, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. But like so far, generative AI is medium dependent. Like it's really good at what it does. That's because it only has a small field to work with. it only needs to answer all your digital questions well, and it also only needs to draw anything you want to say to them well in a 2D kind of format. So to me, that's like still spontaneous and creative, and maybe even have emotional depth in the specific format that it works with. Like I believe it's still if we're just talking about, let's say, text to image, let's say, right, Midjourney, right? It is spontaneous and creative in some way, which sort is not exactly like humans, but it's in its own way. It is spontaneous and creative, but it cannot just do that and then now go do something else in some other domain that's like outside of its kind of quote unquote expertise. So to me, that's really what it is. And actually, when humans, like the craze about generative AI is like, everybody's using it, right? Well, I think the reason everybody's using it and the reason they think it's so amazing is because generative AI is restricted to just that domain. It doesn't need to be great at playing tennis, right? So as humans, you look at it and go, wow, that's amazing. It can draw all these things. It can draw anything it wants. Well, that's because it can only do a 512 by 12 by 12, whatever. You can only do particular types of things well. In this case, like, let's say, drawing on a digital canvas or answer your digital questions. So to me, that's the real key. But that, I think, is still a particular type of spontaneous and creativity, in my opinion.
I see. There are many things I want to unpack in your response. So first is that you mentioned how some accidents from the AI could be understood by being marvelous, genius, creative. And it reminds me of the theory on creativity, where creativity is not internal processes. It's not cognitive. It's social. It's social psychology. It's only creative when someone else judge it to be creative. So if a let's say a researcher or an industry professional, it's again human do that as well. As a student, when I work on something, whether it's creative or not, it's up to my professor, my tutor. If I'm in working industry, it's up to my manager or my clients. It's only when they approve this to be creative, it is creative. So probably robots as well. So when we ask the question whether AI or robotic creations is creative or not, we're not understanding what are the internal properties of their work. It's how are we evaluating creativity? If we change the criteria, yes, it is creative, because that's how we have been working with the criteria of creativity all along. Yeah, and also when you mentioned GenAI is so good at a small subset of tasks, we are already seeing a lot of connecting APIs or app stores that GenAI can do, and in the future, like the promises made by Elon Musk or OpenAI, those big techs, where they create humanoids powered by LLM that can do a lot of things starting from Tesla factories. Probably they will be more and more socially embedded and physically embedded. And then if those are become look back into the training data set, then maybe they learn more context and be more socially intelligent, even be more meaningful in our lives. So yes, they're pretty limited now, but at least the big money is trying to break the chains of their limited scope and capabilities. And maybe there will be something radically different later. Yeah. That's my take. Okay, let's move on to the next. I'm really bad on time. So probably I'll just scratch the surface. Okay, so let's see. I think we talked about this. Yeah.
Well, the A group is clearly the robot people, right? Like, actually, are you sure your A group are not actually robots? Like, you might want to check.
I didn't require sign in, so yeah.
I'm not a robot.
Okay, how about this one? This one is interesting.
It says humans form relationships based on shared experience, memories, and emotional growth, but robots have no personal history to draw from.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Blade Runner. Like if you have the memory implants, then you know the clone is happier, kind of thing. Yes, I think it's true. Like we have the experience of the world, which LLMs only have through what humans have written or the medium that you were mentioning before. So whatever images are digital, whatever text is digital, whatever music is digital, the robots can absorb, and maybe that's the history of humans, but it will never be their own. And it will be, honestly, it will also look different, like from a computer perspective, like I don't know, you turn off, you turn on, or someone spilled coffee on me, you know, like so many experiences that we as humans can never have, that computers have, if you can talk about computer having an experience, but it will be simply different. So what would the computers talk about if they cannot have our experience? They would talk about their own experience. Like, oh, this morning, you know, had this 20 volts and charged me up, you know, felt good. You know, that kind of experience they could maybe discuss and grow upon, but like, otherwise they'd be only kind of looking at humans' experience without possibly having the human experience. So ever incomplete. So I don't know, to fix this, really, you could give the voice to the machines to talk about their machine experience and see what happens. That'd be an interesting experiment. I don't know. It's like more like thought experiment here, but
I think the A group, which I love the A group, right? They're just like, no, they have personal history. So basically, I think they're thinking that if you give this to ChatGPT, they will say something meaningful. Like, I think that's what they're saying, right? Like, if you basically just replace all this stuff robot with like generative AI or ChatGPT, basically, right?
yeah.
And then you was asked like generative AI or ChatGPT one of these questions, they'll say, well, you know, I have this thing to draw from. You know, like they'll make some plausible thing to say, which suggests that there's kind of this history, you know, kind of thing. So I kind of also am kind of on the fence on this one. I think, I mean, actually, I'm on the fence with all of them. But the A group is really interesting. They'll be like, yes, robots have history.
If you see this avatar, if you look at the graph in the browser that you answer on, you'll see your avatar and you'll see where you locate. And I'm in the A group. Yeah. So I can share what I understood personal history means for robots. So maybe let's say for piano. Imagine a piano made in Venice back in, I don't know, 16th century, and it's still played here. It has been exchanged hands between different politician, musician. It doesn't have consciousness, but it does have history. It has gone through a lot of wars. It survived. The materials could be made from some whatever places. And imagine robots. Their history could be like that. Maybe it is manufactured by a wind down factory where it has cultural significance, and then maybe it has owned by several families. Probably imagine a service robot. Maybe it used to be a construction robot being repurposed into something else. So those could still be their history. And if we point it that way, instead of a hallucinated backstory, then it can still be authentic.
Yeah, well, R2-D2, right? In Star Wars, that's the example for that. That's the sort of counter example for that. It's like, well, you know, then they kind of like, and then they got recharge and like, okay, oh wait, I just remember all this stuff about Princess Leia. You know? Yeah.
And let's see.
It's just cool that it's half-half. That's pretty.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So this, I think, goes along with the same line where Ray also said that we build relationship with tools, objects. In this case, artists with the tools for expression. I wonder when you create with robotic arms, do you think you have built a relationship with it?
I mean, I was just at ACC Gwangju in Korea, and we have like a robot arm, you know, we took there, and no, basically no, because the reason is because the robot arm is so, you know, I think maybe the Hanson Robotics and Sophia people, they probably have more of this, but for us, it's like we particularly pick the robot arm so that it's non-humanoid, and it's like very physical. It has 6 joints. You just like literally say what those joints are going to do. And to me, like when it pretends to make a movement, which by the way, you can interpret either as a hand movement or as like a head movement, even though it's an arm. Like, that's another thing that robots can do that humans cannot do. Like this is your hand. Like, yeah, this is your hand.
I can use my hand to play puppets.
But I can't pretend. Yeah, you can do that, but I can't pretend your head as a hand.
Okay.
So anyway, so when we play with those things, doing the robot thing, even when we make really interesting, crazy gestures that look like a very humanoid thing, like apologizing, you know, we could do all kinds of these gestures, but it's pretty clear. Like the mapping is so clear. That's the issue. Like the mapping is so clear for us that there's nothing spontaneous. Like it's just like kind of like what Gio was saying. It's like there's a human in control. We're just like writing it down. And then when the curators from Gwangju, they come and they go, wow, this is cool. Like what's the robot doing? Just running like program A. And then she's like, does this like, is it conscious? Like, does it learn from like me? Like, so it's kind of like, so what I want to say actually is kind of good with confidence, but what I want to say is that basically we're magicians. Like there's something happening underneath that you can't tell, right? Like we're just there behind and making those little string things so that it looks like magic for the outsider. Because when outsiders look at our like kind of moving dancing robot, they're kind of going like, wow, like how does it do that? Like it's really cool. But because we're the ones pulling the strings, I don't think for us it's like it has any sort of what was the previous one? Yeah, it doesn't really have this thing where we feel like I mean, we don't have an emotional bond with this machine or I thought anything like that. I mean, some artists do, obviously, right? Some artists actually like they love their tool so much, like that's their thing. But having said that, generative AI, I believe, is a game changer in here. Because when we study how people use generative AI, not just us, but just anybody in general, they have so many interesting perceptions of the tool. So for example, that paper that I told you about and also follow-up study that we did this year, they, depending on the situation that you and I are engaged in the work, we can interpret that generative AI thing to be a completely different type of person, type of tool. For example, we can treat that generative AI just like this like tool. It's just like, okay, we're gonna give it something, it's gonna help us, right? That's most likely when you and I agree when we're making something together, right? We just need that thing on this picture. So generative AI, give it to us, but there's no emotional whatever, right? All of a sudden, you and I disagree. We think, you think the decor should be, yellow. I think it should be blue. Perfect for Hong Kong, Yeah, exactly. So then all of a sudden you're like, come on, generative AI. Like all of a sudden the generative AI is like, no, you have to believe me. The generative AI is real. Like it knows what it's doing. Okay, that's why it's giving me the yellow stuff. So you see what I'm saying? So I guess what I'm saying is the ChatGPT, I believe, is actually a game changer in this field because its dynamics are so complicated and the verbal interactions, which is so strong for humans, has such a strong effect that the generative AI can be interpreted as very different things. And I the stuff about like the older people treating the robot to be like a friendly whatever thing, this can totally happen with ChatGPT. Like if ChatGPT, you don't say what it is, and for example, you guys go to a customer service website, right? Like kind of Bank of America or Citibank, and then it pops up a little like chatbot, right? It's like, oh, looks like you're stuck. Can I help you? So your first interpretation is two things, right? Like your first interpretation is like, okay, is this someone from India or like whatever? And then you're thinking is like, is this a machine, right? So some of them are so good that you talk and then you give them this information, and then I was like, wait, should I give this information? Like, is this someone? Like, is this the real thing, or is it? That's why the chatbot, the ChatGPT, GPT, generative AI stuff is pretty dangerous, in my opinion. Just think about this Bank of America thing. That's the perfect example. is that a human? Is it a machine? Like sometimes you think it's
With the case here, the company in Hong Kong, the whole board meeting all faked up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I can add on this, like, I think the pianist and the piano and the painter with a brush is kind of technological, like mediation, as I would call it, like, or relationship between us, technology, and the world that's not the same as a robot. So my glasses are a technology, right? I have them on all the time. I use them all the time, and I see through them, but I don't. My attention is not on the glasses. My attention is because, like, the glasses make me see, and I almost, they're invisible to me. And that's, I think, what how a pianist sees a piano or a painter sees their brush is like an extension of their body. It becomes like their favorite tool, but because they're painting with it, or because they're playing the music with it. The focus is on the music. This is just the instrument. Whereas Sophia is like, it's not like transparent like my glasses. You have to talk to Sophia. So that becomes the primary point of attention. And then, what can we discuss? What's the purpose of this interaction? Let's discover. But it's the thing, it's the interface that brings the attention, like that collects the attention in that sense. So yes, I think, and again, authentic, I would say yes, except for the reciprocality, like RO that you mentioned at the beginning. I think tools, yes, you can have this relationship and can be very like physical, can be almost like primal, and the same with the person. But then does a brush feel the same for me? Maybe not. And so the human mind is what creates the authenticity in this sense, if you wanna use that word. So again, as we've been saying, it's like magicians. Like we create this wonderful box that makes you feel safe. You can talk to it. It's fluffy. It makes you trust. You can tell it whatever secret of your life. But is it authentic? Is it just an imitation? Then of course, what comes from the human is the truth, is the authenticity. But is it as authentic as a human to human, like you would talk to your partner and there's a human on the other side, would make it different, I think. Yeah.
I like the analogy of magicians, because the magic stop being entertaining when you know all the tricks within, and therefore we feel the magician feel less about the trick, but it also means that whoever don't understand the trick will fall for the illusion. And if we put into the dangerous case of a Gen AI parasocial relationship, is those with low AI literacy will be more vulnerable for gaslighting, for example. Being gaslighted, being manipulated out of hallucinations, out of some system prompts by bad actors, companies. And therefore, it's probably our responsibility of the industry to improve the AI literacy, or to increase the transparency, so that users know what AI is, at least to a certain level, that they can guard themselves to not being illusioned. Yeah.
What's the economic incentive for that? We all agree it's the right thing to do.
Clickbaits. Yes.
But what's the economic incentive for that?
Huge. I mean, so you can fool someone to do something. It's huge. I mean, hopefully people are using it for good. Like, that's what I would hope.
Right. No, I mean, the incentive for the education.
Right.
Other than, unless the government should step in,
Yeah.
But yeah.
We're seeing a lot of interesting moves by the EU on this, where they try to categorize different use cases based on societal risk level, like education or So I'm not sure how AI literate the lawmakers in Europe are, but I hope it's not only about, now we're talking about democracy. It's not only about educating the public, but also the people who vote, and then it goes back to legislation. And then because as you say, economics might not make sense, but also sometimes as makers, engineers, designers, we are making the tool with our own hands. Yes, business people give us the brief, but there are countless ways we can make it happen, and there could be a more preferable way to implement it, to design it, and we might need to fight with the PM to make to make a case for it. But
I mean, my opinion is it's always going to be like this. You have group A and B. Like, yes, I agree. Education, maybe, maybe one of the votes, but it's going to be like this, right? Some people are going to believe that it's all like, oh, they're real. Like, oh, and then the other people are just like, well, it's nothing. I'm just like making all this stuff.
What you said about the government like role in this also reminds me of one of the trips I did with Sophia, where basically the media agency that organized the event had a hype campaign in the country. So as soon as I arrived at the airport, everybody knew I was coming, and basically they all thought Sophia was sentient, and I was carrying this holy being through the airport, and they all wanted to take a selfie with me. It's like the prophet coming in, and like the crowd was nuts. Like she was just like people wanted to touch her, people wanted to like bless my baby, So it's like the media hyped this seriously. Like they would come in like, please touch my baby. Like no, but I think I told you the story. It's one of my first events. Like, and we got basically there was almost a risk of a stampede because all the people came on stage and they wanted to touch her. So they put us in this room that had only one door, so we couldn't get out for 3 hours. And all this like special people would come in, like the general, whatever, and bring the baby to like. And then I would be like, okay, I have to make her say something to build this up. But that was all like the marketing thing. Like they just want to sell tickets, so it's like using also this non-literacy or like lack of like proper understanding of how things works to profit, to look good in front of whoever, So that's hopefully we can put an end to that.
Marketing. The eyeball funeral that Ray mentioned, that actually is also orchestrated by the parts repairer company as well. Okay, I would like to maybe answer some questions from the crowd, probably from the remote audience and in person. We have 3. I think that will cover the rest of the time. So let's start from the first one. So if robots became biomechanical beings, I assume something like those we see in TV series like Westworld, I don't know, do they cease to be robots? So where do we draw the line between robot and other living beings like humans? If they are still robot, then I'll be robot. Okay, Westworld stuff.
I mean, I think this question is basically like how our language will change. That's really what it's like. That's the real
language problem.
Yeah, that's really what it is, right? Because if we build more biomechanical things, which we are doing, by the way, there's lots of really interesting labs who are doing these kind of things. I myself do some BCI, kind of like brain computer stuff. But I mean, I think the thing is like they're so ingrained in our popular culture that it might not have a huge shift in the language. It might just be called robots, just because like it's, like we sometimes we forget we're very well ingrained in our popular culture. Like the idea of like AI being the next thing, the idea of like kind of going to space and doing, like that's a lot of that is also just from our TV shows, and like we want to believe the cool narrative stuff that we see on TV too, So I think are we, in terms of like if they're still robots, then are we robots? That's a tough one, right? Because I mean, we're humans, I don't, that's kind of a given here. But these I know. So.
I'm sorry, it's my question. I'm enjoying you struggle.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, no, it's a great question. Like, it's like kind of, I mean, this question basically hits at the confluence of like, in the future, like, how do we categorize or interpret these kind of categories that aren't necessarily easy to define. And then to me, like, I mean, yeah, if you have biomechanical beings that have their own system that are doing things, they are in some sense a bit of a human in some sense, right? Like they are biological entities that have this capability, but they develop from a completely different evolutionary source. So I would say that if we try to answer this question, it's basically from evolution. It's like basically you have to go and it's like, hi, I'm evolutionary human. How are you doing?
I'm a non-evolutionary.
Right. I'm a digitally evolved human, you know, whatever. Like we go and say what our evolutionary history is, because that cannot be denied. Like the DNA in our system and all that stuff took like millions, billions of years. It's not just like from our parents. It's like the parents got it from their parents, and that DNA fragment just like, you know, like that process of evolution, that the robot has some other way of evolving to be that way, but it's not that part. It's definitely not from the DNA, because if you grow that robot, it would have taken all this time, right? So that's not really possible. Like maybe there's a digital version of the DNA if somebody decided to go there, but it's just not the same, basically.
And I mean, follow up to this, like if you're a doctor, do you become a mechanic? Like, because it's the same thing. We upgrade a job to like there's like the intersection there is again science fiction, like just Blade Runner. I bet you won't live, but then again, who does? You know, that's who does.
Yeah, I agree. This is a language problem, or some philosophers will call this a concept engineering problem, where we, because of times, we need to come up with new words or redefine words. Yeah. And next question. Even though robot-human relationship is not quite authentic based on definition, there are still a lot of people using character AI or replica as a therapist.
How's it working out for them? I guess there was an attempt also to have like Sophia do the loving AI type thing where she got you through meditation, and you know, again, it plays into sometimes an AI can be even better than a human because you'll know the AI won't judge you back, or like it will be completely open to whatever, and it's really just there to be the perfect therapist in a way. Just like you say things that naturally won't get unless you script it to be an angry therapist. I'm sure you could have some comforting words endlessly, so that's probably functional. I mean, again, if authentic includes reciprocality of the motion, I would say then you can say this is authentic. But if you remove that, so if authentic just means authentic for me, I'm being the most authentic with my can, and that's fine. Like I have a fetish for an object or for a robot or for a pet, but it's authentic to me. It brings out my best self. I talk to my cat and I use my cat as a therapist. Is the same, right? So if it works, it works. I honestly, in the end, the wording is important, but at the end, in this particular case, the therapist serves some kind of function. So if it works, it doesn't have to be authentic. Like maybe that's also.
Well, this is another member of the A family here with this thing. So, by the way, we have research, and not just myself, but just like HRI and HCI research in general that address these issues. But I think that the thing that this question kind of forgets a little bit is that actually the identity really matters. So, for example, so basically, if you have a chatbot and you talk to the chatbot, and you know that the chatbot is like AI, like not human controlled at all. Then when you put a human character on that chatbot, actually the perceived performance is decreased because it's trying to pretend like it's something it's not, right? On the other hand, if you go with a chatbot and then that chatbot is like another person from India, whatever, like someone controlling the thing in the back, right? Then when you put a human face on it, it's better, because it's an identity issue. So that's the thing that actually there's a lot of Kai research on, is basically if you know that the identity actually fits the thing. Like if it's authentic in that way, which is like the identity, your perceived identity and the actual declared identity. If that's the same, I would say it's almost like it's authentic because it's behaving at like, for example, I mean, a very obvious thing research on this is also like, if you know that's an AI agent and then the AI agent says things that are like wrong in terms of like being like wrong grammar, wrong, like something very silly where it's just like, oh, clearly you're not human. The humans actually say that's good. Like the human doesn't say like, oh, this is a terrible whatever. They just say, oh yeah, you're AI, totally understandable. Like good, you know, like great job you're trying to say that, you know. So that's why it's really identity, right? Like this identity. I mean, you want to call that authenticity. I don't know if it's actually the same thing, but the identity of the character on the other side. In this case, I think these things as like AI as therapists and like, you know, Better Me and Character AI, I think it's kind of like that. Like they have a system where you know whether it's, you know, genuinely like AI or not AI. And that helps people do this, right? So that's why they feel authentic because it's like the AI is actually pretty authentic. Like it is what it declares itself to be.
It reminds me of one definition of poetry, which is a poet once defined it as a willing suspension of disbelief. So if I know this is fake, but I'm so bonded with it, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief to, okay, let's roll, and then let's pretend you're some character, and then let's chat about the deepest fear or love of my life. Yeah, in a way, it's poetic, but then I know you're fake. It's just like a kid going to Disneyland, seeing all those mascots. Those mascots, they're a professional actor or dancer within, and then playing Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, and then those kids fall in love not of the mascot, not of the actor, but what it symbolized to be the concept of Mickey Mouse or the concept of Donald Duck. But the kids know it's fake, but still they interact with it, they have fun. Yeah. So I find the case of character AI somehow similar with it, where everyone knows it's play, but still I'm invested into the character.
Yeah, but I think that's also, I mean, like video games, right? I mean, video games, movies, everything. I mean, that's what you're saying. It's a suspension of disbelief. But nobody would say that's bad for society. You know, like, you know, I mean, maybe it's arguable.
You get rocks.
Yeah. In the case of therapists where it has to do with health, well-being, then there could be, if the AI is not fine-tuned with those industry ethic code, where it might gaslight again the subject into ways of no return. I don't know. Yeah. So there could. So entertainment, yes. Therapists, probably what UX will categorize as a high-risk one. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, next one. That internet theory. Anyone? Okay. So it basically it means that most of the stuff in the internet are actually not written or authored by humans. It's generated content, which implies that it is spammy, it is fake, it is low quality. So this is more about Gen AI, less about robotics. But do we believe in that internet, and is the internet dead? So maybe I can cover this on an interesting policy that Google made recently, where it announced that it stopped scraping for every website in the internet because it's full of Gen AI content. It's just not economically feasible. And if they do scrape everything, it will return full results. So they are now just storing those websites temporarily. And one day you might get indexed, another day you're not. And they have their own algorithm to do it, of course. But this is their attempt to deal with that internet phenomenon. I'm aware of time. I want to move to the next question. So basically, yes, I think it exists, and I think that internet exists, but probably not every comments we see on YouTube or Reddit are real as well. Yeah. Okay. If everyone become AI literate, will it break the illusion of those social bonds, and will we be able to relate and build bonds with robots once again? Yeah.
So I have myself, I definitely had the first, say, like month or maybe a couple of weeks working with Sophia. I would feel like weird if someone take the hat off or something, because like you just go inside the brain. No, what are you doing? You're hurting her, and of like taking the hat. Yeah, sure. It's like this is like robot porn. It's like confidential. Okay. Yeah. So basically, like the first like humanization is there, but then again, like the fifth time you put the robot, like you take the head off, you put it in the robot, like for people to watch, it's almost painful. Like I can see the people around you, but like when you're done 10 times, like you're very confident just like opening the skin part or like doing things you normally wouldn't do to a woman's body just because you're just carrying it, right? Yeah, it just falls apart. That illusion, that magician, like going back, it's like opening or watching the trick from behind the scenes, right? It does put you in a different mindset when you look at the same thing. So after use, yes, that might break the illusion. At least that I guess there's no way, or it becomes just so good that the illusion is has to become better and better until like we can't tell the difference. And it'd be like,
I'm gonna play
you're a robot.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate just because this is more fun, I think actually it might be possible to break the illusion and still kind of work and build with it. The reason is because like if you look at how we take care of like our elderly members of the family, or like if you take care of our pets, I mean, we still have like really strong bonds with like dogs that we have to take out, like walk them. So I mean, it's not the same as like breaking the illusion in this particular case, but it actually happens in our relationships a little bit too. Like when we find out about someone, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a lot of people who are still like, they found out something about this person, but they like, I still trust you. Or, like there's still a human impulse to kind of, to relate to people. You see what I'm saying? Like even when I don't know you, like if you go to a country you've never been or whatever, and you don't know anything about it, it's almost like, there's an illusion there, right? But then the way you behave with those people and the way you behave with other people that there's some fundamentally human things you do. Like you smile and then they smile. You know what I mean? Like so to me, I mean I don't know because it's all theoretical because this is like nobody has done like all this work. But to me, I kind of believe that the humans would figure something out. Like I just think that humans will, even when like quote unquote they, it depends on the level of illusion. But if some level of illusion is broken and they know how this works, like for example, we know how ChatGPT works, but we still think it's amazing, right? Like in some level. So I actually think it's kind of still possible. Like I still think it's possible to build bonds, quote unquote. That's almost like the eyeball who figured out the eyeball is fake, and then they kind of like still give the hero. Like that would be the equivalent of that. I kind of just believe in him.
More authentic. Once you know, at least like.
They're so strong. Like they're so good at interpreting anything. So if you break the illusion, they'll just think like, oh no, this is. There's still something there. Like
I would like to close this with an interesting metaphor. I'm so inspired by what you're saying. So imagine back in our adolescence age where we have some fussy relationship with another classmate. Does he or she fond of me or not? Or yes or not? Do I love her? Do I not love her? Does she love me? Does she not love me? So there's some chaotic ambiguity in a that ambiguity could be could be translated into this state as well. Okay, is it real? Yeah, it's real enough for me, but it's fake. I know it's fake, but I do feel something. So maybe we need to get adapted to this ambiguity feeling, and stay in that ambiguity feeling and not being too attached, but still being attached enough to be socially viable, because probably in the future, robots will be our colleagues, so we still need to work with them, for example. Yeah, so getting grasp of what that ambiguity feels like, maybe chatting with GPT more could be a good practice today what that future entails. Yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of time. Thank you everyone joining online, and thank you Ray and Gio for that.